black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and today I have the pleasure of having a special guest this is the second conversation that we were having. The first one, previous to this, we did a conversation on talking about the power and the beauty of our black women and the ancient role that our black women have always been in our lives that some of us have forgotten in this 21st century. And we must get back to that, especially in these times that these laws might be kind of twisted and for all women, but it's going to be even worse for the black women. But this time, in order for us to understand who we are, we must have the proper consciousness. And let me first introduce my guest again. I would like to introduce you to Baba Anda Ma'at. And he was very powerful in the first show about black women, and I'm sure he's going to be even more so when we talk about this topic, about what is consciousness.
Yes.
Okay, why we talk about consciousness, how important the type of consciousness that you walk with. Because the word consciousness, the consciousness kind of, the basic is, if you don't understand what that long word, it just means to be aware. But how you are aware is based on how the ideas and how you think and how you observe the world. Consciousness is a power. Do you agree with that, brother?
I agree, brother, because consciousness is just how we think.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have to look at what things impact our thinking, what information impacts our thinking. Ultimately, our thinking directs our behavior and the things in our speech. So when we talk about consciousness, I think it's very important. You know, and I maybe a good place to start, because we can talk about African consciousness.
Yeah.
But I think to help us to kind of give a separation, there's a quote, I think, a writing by W.E.B. Du Bois, who talked about this double consciousness.
Yeah, I got a book here with many of his speeches. I'll see, I got the camera. Okay, and one of the books in here is called, I think it was in 1904, it came out, called Soul of Black Folk.
Yes.
And in one of the chapters, he talked about this double consciousness that black people had to deal with, and still do today.
Yes.
When they walk out into what Dr. Greg Carr calls today the social structure in Africana studies, and then there is how we deal with each other. Okay, our way of dealing amongst each other. We have to switch. We go out into the world of white America. We have to think a certain way, and when we come home, we talk differently amongst ourselves. That dual consciousness. Could you expound a little more on that?
Well, if you don't mind, because
No, go ahead.
W.B. Du Bois wrote, "It's a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness. One ever feels his two-ness. An American,
I like
a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dog strength alone keeps it from being torn."
Wow.
So W.E.B. Du Bois was identifying something that we're going to have to address to this very day, because coming out of Africa, we had a consciousness, we had a way of thinking and a way of being. Coming here and being transported into this system of enslavement, the Ma'afa, the African Holocaust, we were robbed in many ways of our consciousness, meaning we was robbed of our language. We was robbed of the way we live.
Our tradition.
And our tradition, our God, our beliefs. We was robbed of that. So we was implanted with someone else's consciousness. Now, the thing is that our consciousness could never be completely destroyed in the sense the African consciousness is in us. It's just suppressed. So you got these two ideas of being or thinking in this dark body.
And also added to that, the isolation, because we were segregated, in slave camps and plantations. We were separated from the social structure, the white America. I mean, even a report that was done in 1968, ordered by Lyndon Baines Johnson after the big riots of black folks. It was called the Kerner Commission. And they said themselves, the government of the United States of America said there's two Americas.
That's
one
right.
black, one white, one separate, and both separate, but one is unequal. And
That's right.
and that's what you're talking about. We've walked that, I call it the enslaved road, from 1619 to today. And there's another America, as we've seen in the previous election, that exists. And I call it what it is. People don't realize that America had a caste system. Until we understand that, okay, not of our creation, but you had to create a caste system where what you were talking about, the African consciousness had, prevailed, because we dealt with each other and talked with each other. And then there's this consciousness that we had to deal with when we went into white society. And they did not want us to be part of that white society. So we literally had a caste system. We don't call it that, but that's what it is.
Yeah, and it brings about something else that, I heard Dr. John Henry Clark, of course, one of our great ancestors, historians, say that basically we have multiple personalities.
Okay.
As a people in this society,
Have to.
because we have to almost put on a different hat. We have to speak differently when we go into different settings.
Exactly.
So it's one way to speak when we go into this professional setting.
Yeah.
And it's another way to speak when we just hanging out as brothers. It's another way we speak when we hanging out with our woman and our children. So we take on these different ways of thinking and acting based upon where we are. So we have these multiple personalities, but the real struggle is that we have never been able to regain our true identity.
Yeah.
Because we have this double consciousness, these multiple personalities. So the struggle is, how do we come back into our consciousness as a people? And I would say this, brother.
Go ahead.
What you have done with the Umoja Circle, and I said this in the first part, and that is that by trying to restore our memory, trying to remind us of who we are based upon our history, therefore we can come back into the greatness of us as a people and embrace our African identity, our black identity, and stand up proud and strong for who we are as a people.
Exactly.
So when we go into any space,
We walk.
all space, we carry the greatness of us as a people, African people, black people in the world.
Wow.
We carry those ideas, we carry our legacy, we carry our ancestors. But right now,
I know, Doc, listening to you, I want you to understand, when you study as much as both of us do, when one of us is talking, or anybody who has true knowledge, who is working on himself, okay, bringing that multiple personality into that oneness again, it triggers something in you, okay? And it triggers certain, and what it usually triggers in me is quotes by our ancestors that I've heard from many different ages. Okay, I talked in the last show when we were talking about black females. I brought up Anna Julia Cooper.
Yes.
And one of the quotes that she said, this is a sister that was born in 1870, and she was born in, I think she was like 1860s or 70s, and she died in the deep in the 21st century. Brilliant sister. She said, every room I walk into, I bring my people with me.
that's right.
Okay, and then another thing that you said when I was listening to you that made me think of the great anthropologist, multi-talented polymath, Dr. Ivan Van Serter. He said, "We are a shattered diamond." Okay, each piece of the diamond is strong, but we have to bring the pieces back. And this society that we were kidnapped and brought to shattered the diamond.
That's right.
Okay, but they made each piece think that it's not strong. Each piece is not smart. Each piece, because but what you got to understand, and that's why they are afraid of teaching us our history in those schools, because that's putting the diamonds together, and they can't have that.
But that's the restoring of our consciousness. That's why we
gotta do
fight
it.
and we struggle so hard that we must do that.
We got to do it ourselves.
That's our
Exactly.
responsibility
Yeah.
to restore our memory
Nobody
of
should.
ourselves.
That's what the ancient ancestors would put when you walk through any of the temples.
Know thyself.
You've been to Kemet, and I've been to Kemet, and all the temples will say,
thyself.
"Know thyself."
Yes.
Because if you don't know, if whatever is inside you is distorted, everything that you do out of that is going to be a distorted action. Look at us. Look how we function as most people.
And just looking at our names, we've gone through so many identities, transitions, just name-wise. Of course, being here in America, we've gone from African to being Negro to being colored to being Afro-American. We're trying to identify.
We know something is wrong.
That's right.
We know something intuitively because we were not told things. Like you said before, there's that African part of us that's suppressed, and every time it comes out in these things, we know this ain't right. What they're telling us, what they're teaching us, what they're telling our kids, that we have not. Literally in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, they were saying that Africa was a dark continent and nothing came out of that, which was a bull. And that's what they were teaching in schools like Harvard and Yale.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That kind of information. What does that do to your consciousness? Why do you think Carter G. Woodson started Black History Month?
And that's the struggle, because what you just Africa was misrepresented, and therefore we disconnected ourselves from Africa because we did not want to identify with what is supposed to be these Tarzan images and these images of subhuman. Yes. But when we know the true history, then we would take pride in reconnecting to our African identity. We would take pride in our blackness because, it's just in the language itself. When you think of black, dismal, evil, ugly. These are the words that are used to associate with black. But when you think of black in the sense of powerful, beauty,
unity, oneness, yes,
then you take on a different consciousness.
When a culture tries to shape. Today, there is a discipline called social engineering, okay?
No doubt.
Okay?
No doubt.
So I want you to understand that there is a science that understands and studies how to shape how you view the world. That's why your consciousness is very important, okay? Who supplies the information? But on top of that, but I want people to understand that why do you think when you go to war, before you go to war, they shape your consciousness by propaganda? Okay? When you go to vote, they put out all this misinformation to shape your consciousness because your ideas shape your actions. And if you don't know and determine who you are, somebody else will do it for you and have been doing for hundreds of years.
Yes, and that's the real danger when we don't have our consciousness, when we don't know who we are.
We're shaped by somebody else.
Yes. Someone shapes us, someone guides us, they direct our thinking, they direct our behavior, they direct our language. Many times, and I know you've experienced this, you hear us talking as a people, and you're like, where did that idea come from?
That ain't true. And it's coming out of our people that look like us mouth as if it's real, and they get into debates, both sides talking nonsense. And you know the thing, I read the psychology book, because part of your study, I just don't read African books. I read the mind. Whoever writes it, wisdom, I don't care. I learn how they manipulate. That's what I learned from Dr. Clark. You got to look at the group that dominates you. How do they think? What do they study? What do they know about you? But one book said that there are many levels of consciousness. For example, when you are at the consciousness of sleep, you can't function any other way. If you had the consciousness of wakefulness, you're not going to be going to sleep. Okay? So not only is it a power, but it has many layers and triggers that. You mentioned something about the environment that was very profound.
Yeah,
About
I
to
said
that
basically,
point.
I think your consciousness can be manipulated by
That's-
your environment.
There you go.
See, you can go into certain, they've done research where they have shown where if you take a group of people into a cold room, it's quite different how they respond and engage with each other if you take them into a room that's warm and comfortable.
Exactly. One level of consciousness, they're focused on the cold and they function a certain way, and another level of consciousness.
That's when you go into a warm environment. So likewise, when you go into a space where you see images of yourself on the wall or your ancestors, that wakens a consciousness in you. When you go into a space where you see the images of other people, and I'm saying other people outside yourself and your race, then that also manipulates your consciousness. See, when our children go into the classroom and they don't see images of themselves, they don't see their history, their story being told, how does that manipulate their consciousness?
Yeah.
Likewise, as adult, when we watching TV and we're watching these programs and we don't see ourselves in the story, or then we see ourselves in the story, but these, well, that's some different stories we don't need to see. But the idea is
That's
that
part of the manipulation,
that's
though.
part of the manipulation.
Yeah.
So we looking at the images on this television and it's manipulating our consciousness, thinking that that's how we're supposed to dress. This is how we're supposed to talk. This is how we're supposed to act.
And who benefits from that? The same people who produces those products that you see
That's
the,
right.
the actors wearing, okay, in this capitalist system.
Yes.
Okay, that's another one of those manipulation of our consciousness. And what do? In order to fulfill that image, we spend. And who do we give out? 1.3 or 2.3? Where we spend every year as a people of African descent? Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Are we giving it to our communities? Companies, or are we buying black like we used to do back in the day, because we had the consciousness of least of knowing that we were in an environment of racism, when segregation was alive. We lost that after the 60s. 2 or 3 generations now, everybody, let's all work together. This system was never meant for that. Okay, if you don't have that consciousness, we're a competition.
That's
to
right.
that.
Yeah. The system was never designed for us to embrace our
Never.
history, our identity.
Nope.
So
Nope.
it constantly
That diamond-
manipulates our consciousness through manipulating our environment.
That diamond
Yes.
shattered. Keep that diamond shattered.
So yeah, but go ahead, my brother.
No. I'm sitting here listening to you. The call and response of our people.
Yeah,
That's all I'm
yeah,
doing.
you just-
I'm like, amen or whatever. That's all I'm doing, bro. You go on. You speaking some truth, some truth. Yeah, but like I said earlier, consciousness is a power, and it's one of the many forms of power. And when you were talking, also you triggered to emphasize when we're talking about how environments can shape your consciousness. You and I were in the military 100 years ago, right? Before I came into the military, when I was in high school and I had a little college, I didn't care whether I wore a hat or not, or I didn't care if my clothes were mixed match, colorful or whatever. Then I went into the Air Force, and when I went in there, within maybe a week, they had my whole personality changed when I didn't even wear my cover,
Yeah.
Okay, just in 2 or 3 weeks, your whole consciousness, you start sweating. You're tensing up. Things that you didn't do 3 weeks earlier on the other side of that gate when you were just in civilian life. But by the time you came in there, look how you changed. You're marching in formation with hundreds of other folks. All those things, that environment, and it shaped you. It has a purpose, I understand,
right.
in the military for that community.
That's right.
That's what they needed you to be, and they shaped your consciousness like that. That's what we have to understand as a people. Are we working in lockstep? No. Our consciousness is shattered.
But it goes to what you said earlier about social engineering. See, we go into the Air Force and any institution you go into, basically it's going to shape or program your consciousness so you can think and behave a certain way in this environment. Now, going back to African traditional systems, in the rites of passage, that is saying when a male or female goes from boyhood or girlhood
Yeah.
and become a woman or a man, in the sense, they go through a rites of passage. In that rites of passage, they are introduced to new concepts that shapes their thinking as to how you are to be as a woman or a man, and therefore preparing you to contribute to
the community. Yes, like everybody else, Air Force or whatever, the business we had those things. And when they brought us over, you said, like you said, when they brought us over, we used 1619, 100 years before the Spanish did it too. But anyway, when they kidnapped those people and put us, I don't call them slaves. There was no country called slave.
not at all.
Enslavement.
That's right.
That's a condition that we were put in. They took us off those concepts.
Yeah, but and I appreciate it. 'Cause I just want to piggyback on what you just said, because so often we talk about slaves, and I agree with you 1,000%, brother. We got to say enslaved Africans, but we were enslaved. Enslaved mean that we was in a condition, but we was African people because we had a culture, a way of life. We had a history. We were brought here to really be builders of a nation. So, but the idea is that we came here with a consciousness. We came here with a language. We came here with a way of living, food, a
We
diet.
had governments.
Thank you.
We had
program, mothers and fathers.
But what were we told when we got here? Well, we don't want to trust them with weapons because we need a white person to lead them in battle. We had great empires, right?
That's right.
Right.
So, but the point, and I think we had this conversation briefly, because we can get into a whole lot of different things, but the idea is that when we were brought here during that period of time initially, we was robbed of our consciousness, meaning that our language was changed. We was no longer speaking Wolof. We now was forced to learn English.
Yoruba.
We no longer had African names like Nkrumah. Now we was Johnson, Jackson.
Slaveholders' name. That's social engineering.
We no longer focus on a diet of vegetables and fruit. Now we was brought into some other stuff worse.
Chitlins and all that stuff. But our wisdom did our best with it.
Because we had to survive. I mean, that was just survival.
But want to show you that it was socially engineered when all your senses is controlled by another group.
That's right. And it goes back, I know you're familiar with Dr. Amos Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And he had brought this up, and I think it's something that we really need to look at, because many times we would say, and we do say, well, that was back then. Now we free.
Yeah, hundreds of years ago. Well, we got to worry about that.
Yeah, that ain't that doesn't have anything to do with me now.
I'm normal now,
and then he asked, well, what name do you have? What language do you speak? What clothes do you wear? What God do you worship? All these things are what came into existence in our consciousness during our period of enslavement. So now we got to ask ourselves, does it work in our best interest?
Thank you. The action and behavior that comes from the ideas we're working on, is it to our best? Look at us. Where we, just because you have, Dr. Carter Anderson said, just because you sleep at a place doesn't make it a community.
That's right.
A community has a bank. Black Wall Street was a community, okay? All the other black institutions and banks and land and all that stuff that we came out of enslavement, we worked together, okay? And we gave all that away because the consciousness manipulated us, some image or some idea that some other group is putting in there or coming into our community. We're leaving out of those communities, but why is other groups coming in and selling them? Because they know who we are.
And that's something very powerful too, because I think when someone can manipulate your consciousness, they can make you think that what you have is not valuable or worthless or less than, when they're trying to sell you something that really doesn't have value. I always have this little image in my mind sometimes, brother. We on natural soil, green grass. It might not be all green because we haven't had rain in a while, but across the fence, you have this beautiful green grass, but we don't know it's artificial.
Mm.
So someone is telling us, well, if you want green grass, you want to come
Right.
on over here. Sell us that and come on over here. Well, we get over there on the artificial grass. It's hard to live
Got
on. It's
knee
hard
problems.
to walk on. You're falling on, you hurting yourself. So the artificial grass is not natural, and it takes away our humanity in a way. It robs us of ourselves. So what we basically have given up, what was natural and normal, where you had underneath the soil, the diamonds and the gold and the things, cobalt, the things you had spoken of earlier. But now we're living on this artificial soil, on this artificial grass, and needless to say, it doesn't benefit us.
You know, people don't realize or don't understand that the people that came from West Africa that was kidnapped and called, all Bob and whatever name they gave us and took us from our traditions, don't understand that that West African land that we were kidnapped from, they had big empires.
That's right.
You know, the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, you know, the Ghana, which lasted, what, 330 BC to 1250 AD. This is long before we were introduced to Greek and all that stuff. We had those things. People don't recognize that Mali was one of the richest empires on the planet. Mansa Musa and his Hajj, he spent, 800 tons of gold. A black man.
Yeah.
Why can't we have community investments named after him? Why we got Rockefeller? Why we got all these other groups of people that took from us? He gave that out as he went from the Mali Empire all the way to Egypt. You know?
And I think it comes down to it, brother. And I would ask this, and I know we only have a few minutes, but what has been the key to helping you restore your consciousness as a black man?
Knowing myself. You got to work within. We got to change our mindset. You know, history is more than just dates and times. It's part of our human being. Okay, where my car's parked, I need to have historical data to find it. That's right. You know? Where everything you do, you use when you go to a doctor, they ain't going to treat you without a medical history. If you don't go to, get some loan, they're not going to do without a financial history. History is one of the most, what did Malcolm say, of all our studies?
History is most qualified to reward our research.
The consciousness that is shaped. You know, when you go to a psychiatrist, what does he do or she does? Go to your past to heal what is you're traumatized today. That's the best way I can answer that, brother.
And I appreciate that because, again, brother, I say what you have been doing here almost 29 years
29 years this month.
Has been to restore our consciousness. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a part
and
of it.
And you're welcome back anytime, brother. And then, as you can see, this is why I have this conversation with him. I couldn't have it with anybody any better. So until next time, peace, Hotep. Bye-bye.